What's your name?
Stephen Fife.
How many years did you play professional baseball?
I was in from 2008 to 2018, but did not play in 15, so I think that's 10 seasons.
What are you doing now?
I'm working in commercial real estate for Cushman & Wakefield Pacific.
When did you know that it was time to retire?
Last year, August was tough, but honestly on the drive home, well, I finished this season, I closed the last game of the last inning of the last game, and got a strikeout, got the ball. It wasn't a save opportunity, but anyway, kind of left on that, and then made a phone call to my agent outside of Amarillo, Texas, and he made the same decision in the same month on the same journey home in the exact same city as I did. So it was kind of a lot of things kind of matched up and just kind of said it's time to move.
Coming up on this edition of Life Around the Seams, our guest is Stephen Fife. Now, how it is that I came to interview Stephen is fascinating. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the highs and lows of his career, going to Japan, trying to come back from Tommy John surgery, what it was like pitching on the day of that Boston Marathon bombing when he knew people who were participating, and a lot more about his career. I don't know how long this is going to last, but I think it's going to be fun and interesting. I think Stephen had a lot of interesting things about his career, and I'm looking forward to learning about them. This is Life Around the Seams.
Former Major League pitcher Jim Bouton once wrote, "You spend a good piece of your life gripping a baseball, and in the end, it turns out it was the other way around all the time." Welcome to Life Around the Seams, a podcast about baseball people who have interesting stories from between the lines, and sometimes even more interesting stories outside the lines. Here's your host, Josh Sushan.
All right, Stephen. Well, thanks for joining me here today from we're on location in Boise, Idaho, your hometown, and I'm here visiting for some work. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun to see you again.
All right, so I'm going to give the background for our audience. Stephen played in the Little League World Series in 1999. He was part of the first team ever from the state of Idaho. He played second base. Grew up here in Boise, went to Bora High School, Everett Community College, University of Utah. Drafted by the Red Sox, third round 2008. 3.5 years later, he's at Double-A, gets traded to the Dodgers. Made his major league debut for the Dodgers in 2012. 5 starts that year, 10 in 2013, 1 in 2014. Tommy John surgery, misses all of 2015. Cubs Triple-A in 2016. Marlins Triple-A and Japan in 2017. And then Indians Triple-A last year. A total of 808 innings in the minors, 18 appearances in the majors, 4 wins. A 3.66 ERA in the majors. That's not bad. It's pretty good.
It's not bad. It's a decent little sample, I guess.
What did I forget?
Nothing. I don't think. Everything's there.
All right, so I'm going to start by explaining how we even came to be sitting in this hotel room doing this interview. So I moonlight doing the Lobos women's basketball team. I look at the schedule. We're at Colorado State. We're at Boise State. I see we got about a day and a half in between. What am I going to do? Maybe I can record a podcast with someone who's in Boise. I don't know anyone who's in Boise. I start Googling former major leaguers from Boise, thinking maybe somebody had moved back home. I see a list of everyone who's born in the state of Idaho who's played in the major leagues. I see your name and I go, no, he's still playing. I go and I check baseballreference.com. Yeah, he pitched last year. He's probably in spring training. I don't think there's a chance of getting him. Maybe it's not going to happen. Within 10 minutes, you sent me a LinkedIn invitation. It was serendipitous. So why were you contacting me on LinkedIn?
So, yeah, it's just part of the thing, kind of moving on from playing baseball is you've got to create a way to connect with people outside of baseball, and LinkedIn apparently is the world's way of doing it, the professional world's way of doing it. So I've been working with a gal out of New York that MLB put me in contact with to work on basically providing other people, making connections via LinkedIn. And so a couple times a week I'll get on there and just start going through the list. And if I know your name, I'll connect with you. And if you're in the commercial real estate or the in real estate world at all, kind of in any fashion, I'll try to connect with you. And eventually some direct messages are sent between one another, and you kind of reconnect with some people that you don't know or kind of lost touch with, I guess, and then you obviously connect with people that you don't know to try to grow your network and be able to operate in the business world.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just figured some Russian bots were like paying attention to what was going on or whatever. But I'm glad that we're able to connect. So let's talk your career. Let's talk some baseball. This is March. Normally you're in spring training. Is this triggering different emotions, weird emotions that you're not in Arizona or Florida right now throwing a baseball?
It's a little different. I've still got buddies, obviously, that are playing, so I'm getting the Snapchats and the goofy messages from all those guys that are having a good time. But, I mean, honestly, I think I was at a point, and I am at a point where I was ready to move on, and so I haven't really had that tough day where I'm sitting in the office going, this sucks, like I'm in the wrong place. I mean, I'm in the right place where I'm supposed to be right now, and I wouldn't trade my career for anything. It was a fantastic experience, but, I mean, the only thing I really miss about the clubhouses or the spring training atmosphere is just how big the clubhouse is when you get there and you get to interact with all these guys that you haven't seen in a while and meet new guys and create all new relationships. But I'm getting to do that in a completely different way right now, and it's been fulfilling on this side, but definitely enjoyed what I did, but I can't say that I miss the looming departure after spring training.
And not knowing where you're going to go. Whether it was high school, junior college, what was plan B if baseball had not worked out? Did you have one?
I did. So I went to junior college in an effort to just get Division I, and I left high school with a dream of becoming a hand surgeon. So I started off on that path, and then shortly after I got to Utah, just into my junior year, just my second semester of my sophomore year, I was in the second round of science courses, the 102 or 202 courses, and I was scheduled to miss like 8 of the 15 labs for each one because they were usually given on Thursdays and Fridays, in which Utah we traveled Thursdays and Fridays for most of the semester. So I approached the professors, and they were like, yeah, you can't take this course because you can only make up 2 labs, so you will fail. And so at that point I kind of U-turned and got some advice from some professional people out there that are successful, that are still in my life now, and decided on business finance was the direction I was on. So that's when I left Utah after being drafted. I was a business finance major. Okay,
it's interesting that you were interested in being a hand surgeon. You didn't hear it, but our audience did. The opening where it's got this cool jingle, we quote the guy who wrote Ball 4, Jim Bouton, who famously once said, "You spend your whole life gripping a baseball, and in the end, it turns out it was the other way around the whole time." And I'm curious your thoughts on that quote with your career, especially since you originally considered being a hand specialist.
That's an interesting quote. I mean, so yeah, you spend a lot of your time gripping a baseball and trying to figure out how to manipulate it, and then it definitely takes hold of your life in a lot of fashions, and has definitely molded me into what I've become over here in especially the last 15 years or so, since you kind of turn the page out of junior high and high school and get out of your parents' house, and baseball has really been the thing that has it's the game that teaches you life, and so. I think that's kind of more where that quote's going, is that the baseball side of things really does translate to life and the ups and downs, especially on the player side of things, where you have to really figure out how to operate in not the best circumstances at times.
If a team calls and they say, "Hey, we need some depth at AAA, and you got a chance," how's your arm? What do you say?
No, I shut that down. I told my agent. He called me to make sure that our conversation was how we had it in just before the winter meetings. And I had that last kind of heart-to-heart with him and just said, if an Asian team calls with a guaranteed contract, then I'll 100% go play. But right now I'm not throwing, I'm not working out, I'm spending time with my kids and trying to get my real estate license in Arizona. And so don't even bring up my name to major league clubs. So at that point is when I really shut the cover on the book and put it away.
All right, well then let's open up one of the first chapters of the book, the Little League World Series. How many players from that team, how many teammates do you still have their phone number in your cell phone right now?
Probably 8 of the 11.
That's pretty darn good.
7 or 8 of the 11, yeah. It was a group that we started when we were 9 years old. It was kind of the same crew. We all grew up in the same area and all played together for a long time. And I still keep in touch. In fact, my oldest son is named after, not in fully named after for him, but Austin Jones was the catcher on the Little League World Series team. He was my catcher in high school. He went to a different junior college, but then joined me at the University of Utah. We were roommates there, and has been a good buddy of mine for a long time. So I keep in touch with a lot of those guys.
What are some of your biggest? First of all, did you realize just what a big deal the Little League World Series was at the time when you arrived?
Not a chance. In fact, we were sitting in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, after this flight from California, and we've probably been there a day or two, and we're upstairs in this like gaming room. There's ping pong tables and pool tables, and back then there was, I think it was Nintendo 64 is what they had. So we're up in this room and we're playing around, and they had like this, probably 40-inch flat screen on the on the wall, which was one of the first we'd ever seen. The flat screens were completely new, and it was an ESPN broadcast of the game happening 100 yards from where we were at. I mean, it was literally, we could look out the window across the pool and down the hill, and there was Howard J. Lamatti Stadium, and there's an international game being played. And that was kind of the first time that I was like, wow, this is kind of weird. Like, that's ESPN. Like, that's a cable. Like, we watch that at night. Baseball Tonight's on the same channel. And that was kind of our first taste of what we got. But it really actually didn't sink in all the way until we got all the way back home. And we flew back into the, Boise terminal. And we get out of the plane. And actually, before we get off the plane, they're like, if you were a part of the Little League team, like, you got to stay on the plane. And we're all going like, what? You stay on the plane? Like, let's go home, man. We've been away from home for like 3 or 4 weeks. And sure enough, we come off the plane, and this was before, obviously, TSA got all cracked down on. And there was probably 1,500 people in the terminal, like, cheering for us when we got off the plane. I mean, it was crazy. So, and then we had like a parade and a whole thing. We got out of school a couple times the first week. But it really wasn't until we literally kind of got off the plane back from Williamsport, and there was nobody'd ever seen that many people in an air terminal.
When you were in Williamsport, you're 12 years old. Are you signing autographs, or like people like pointing and like you're a major leaguer almost?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely did sign autographs. I mean, none of us knew what we were going to sign, but we all ended up finding our own little way to sign our name or whatever. And when Williamsport is a super small town, and it's such the trees and the geography of the place really make it feel like you're just kind of in another Little League town, a Little League park type deal. We knew it was kind of a big deal because we got outfitted with all new stuff, but they really make it feel like it's a really small community when you're there. And so when you're walking around, you're not getting bombarded by it. I mean, I'm sure now that social media is blown up, I'm sure that there's a ton more attention to the players as they're there. In fact, when you watch it, they're bussed in, and their dorms are literally like maybe 150 yards up the hill. We used to just walk, but we had a great time. We could walk around and do whatever we wanted, and they had this pin trading tent for all the players and fans, and we'd go in there and use our pins and trade them here and there, and it was a cool experience.
What mementos still remain that you still have from that?
Well, my mom was a scrapbooker back in the day, and so I just moved up here, so I just was going through a bunch of stuff, and I've got like full-size posters of the Little League team before we went to the regional and at the regional, and some of the Idaho Statesman papers and print-offs. I got a bunch of stuff still, and I didn't even open a couple of the boxes that are just – I probably got 4 boxes and then some stuff that doesn't fit in the box. But I've got quite a bit of stuff, and my trophy case has a spot in it for – we got like a little certificate of a World – Little League World Series participant that's in there, and some pictures and some balls and stuff. And so – excuse me. The jersey and hat are definitely on display in my office. So I've got quite a bit of stuff.
When does it kind of wear off? Like, you go back to school, I would think you guys are a big deal when you go back to school, you and your teammates. Like, when do you just become normal kids again?
Probably when football practice really started getting going. The first couple of weeks was definitely interesting because we actually were all transitioning here in Boise. You don't have a middle school, you have junior highs, and so you transition from 6th to 7th grade from the elementary. And so we were all just getting into 7th grade, so we're all going from our respective elementaries into basically 2 junior highs. And they honored us like over the announcements, and we're all new kids in this school that's 10 times the size of the little elementary school we just came from. And we were kind of little local celebrities. They did like at least at West Junior High, they did a little presentation, like a little lunchtime, pulled all the classes, the whole population of the school into the gym, and did a little presentation as well. So it was kind of cool, but it lasted a couple weeks, and then football season started, and that was the most important thing.
Yeah, that becomes the most important thing. When do you become a pitcher? You were second baseman then. Did you pitch at all then?
I got forced into a couple games early in my childhood. I think I pitched once when I was 10. I pitched maybe once or twice when I was 11, 12, and then tried again when I was 14. And my brother was a pitcher, and I honestly wasn't good enough to pitch. I didn't have the ability to command the baseball at all. And so watching my brother be successful at it, but the kind of pressure that got put on him, I was just like, I don't ever want to pitch. And so never planned to pitch. I broke my thumb my sophomore year on varsity as a third baseman, and by way of default, I was out for 6 to 8 weeks, which was pretty much the entire high school season. So I used a bucket of balls, went to practice with the team, wasn't able to do much because I didn't have a glove on my hand, but it would keep my arm in shape by grabbing the bucket of balls when they were doing base running and stuff like that to keep my arm in shape, and ended up one day throwing. I put a metal chair on top of the plate and started throwing balls at it, and was screwing, just playing around. And I threw a couple curveballs and dropped the curveball right on top of the seat, right on top of the plate. And I had no idea anybody was watching me. But the guy who ran the pitchers, is a local guy here still, Brad Dalton, came over to me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Just playing around." And he's like, "What'd you just throw?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" "I threw a baseball." And he goes, "No, what pitch did you throw?" And I said, "Curveball." And he's like, "You know what you're doing?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Well, you're a pitcher now." And I looked at him and I said, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "No, you're going to come to pitcher's practice tomorrow at 3. And he had a whole routine to it. But anyway, that's how it all started. And my first time back on a diamond after breaking my thumb was a relief appearance at Timberline High School here locally. And it was in a Summer Legion game. And I went like 4 1/3 innings, and we got the win. And I was pretty beat up after, but it was awesome.
Tell me about why Utah. You went from high school to a junior college. Why Utah?
So from junior college, I had already talked to Conger. Brian Conger was the pitching coach at University of Utah. I'd worked with him at a couple camps. He almost signed me out of high school to go there. The proximity to Boise was attractive to me. Had some family stuff go down my senior year, so I wanted to be close for my sister who was still in Boise, and the coaching fit was the biggest thing. And honestly, I kind of probably lacked the confidence necessary I got explored a little bit by Pepperdine, University of Arizona, Gonzaga. But when Utah came a calling, and I knew I had already had a relationship with them, that I kind of knew that's where I wanted to go. And so they took me on an official visit and offered me a scholarship, and I pretty much signed right there and didn't really explore any further than the conversations, and finances were probably the biggest player. That Gonzaga, Pepperdine, and Arizona were all well into the mid-20s, if not 50s, for finances. And I didn't want to take on $150,000 in debt in 3 or 4 years of playing college baseball.
Unless I'm mistaken, 1999, I know the draft was out on TV. I'm pretty sure it wasn't even on the internet yet. So you were third-round pick. What do you remember about the day? How did you even find out that you were drafted? What do you remember about that day?
So that was 2008.
No, it was on the internet then.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
So the first round was on, I think the first round was covered on TV, and then they took it from TV and put it on the internet right after. And so things picked up pretty quickly, and I got put in the talks and put in the prospect list and stuff. But there was a chance that I could go in the first or second round, and got some calls from some teams the night before. Anyway, so we went up to a bar out here called Rudy's, which was a new bar at the time, not too far from where I grew up, and called all my family friends and buddies and everything, and threw a kind of a draft party my mom put together for me. And so we were all sitting there hanging out and waiting for things to happen and watching it. We actually streamed it off of my laptop onto like their projector screen. And so, things went that way, and I got the phone call just before I got drafted, and things got pretty elated. It was a fun day. And then of course after that the beer started flowing.
Yeah. How many days later until you're on a plane to Lowell, Massachusetts, to be with the Lowell Spinners to start your career?
That's right. Actually, they flew us into Boston because Lowell's only 40 minutes out, and I actually got the opportunity to sign in Fenway Park in the GM's booth up there. So I was with Theo and Mike Hazen or Kel Ferreira, and in the iconic GM booth that still sits exactly where it sits today. But I think it was about 10 days or so. I think the draft was. I signed June 17th, I believe, was the day I signed, and I think the draft was like the 6th. So it took a few days to work out the contract details. It actually took a few days for them just to call to even start negotiations because they had some other stuff going, and baseball's a crazy business world. So, about 10 days after the draft, I was in Boston and signed a contract.
Where's the first place you live in Lowell, Massachusetts? Are you with a host family? Are you with teammates? Who are you with?
No, so the Lowell Spinners play on the UMass Lowell campus on their baseball field, and we stayed in the UMass Lowell dorms.
Do you feel like you're still in college?
Oh, yeah, definitely did. I mean, they were actually decent dorms. They weren't like your standard or old school, I guess, like 12 by 12 room with a bunk bed in them. It was kind of a multi-bedroom with a one common area. So we had like a kitchen and a family room in the common area. There was a bathroom on each end, and then I think there was 3 bedrooms in the apartment. So we started there, and then it rained a bunch, and the apartments got black mold, the dorms did, and so we ended up spending like the back half of the season living at the Red Lion on the river because we didn't have anywhere else to go.
Did you have any teammates or yourself who just didn't know how to cook, didn't know how to do laundry, just didn't know how to be an adult that led to funny circumstances?
I've said for a long time, and there's guys out there that probably attest to it, I've taught guys how to load dishwashers, do their laundry, drive a stick shift, write a check, how to read.
So you're the
bill.
dad.
Yeah, I've had a couple players, and I don't know if they'll ever hear this interview, but I've had a couple guys call me dad. Like literally when I walk in the clubhouse, so there's dad, or it's just the way it goes. But I mean, Ryan Westmoreland was a guy I lived with in spring training one year. Good kid. Unfortunate story for him. He's guys had a couple E60 stories written about him. And anyway, I taught him how to literally. He got a big bonus, and he bought a condo in Estero, Florida, and I taught him how to pay the cable bill and how to read his bank statement, and how to balance his checkbook. And anyway, it's kind of funny. I've done a lot of those dad-type things, but I guess that's just a testament to my parents being able to teach me those things before I got out of the house.
Did you ever have any off-season jobs in the minor leagues?
In the minor leagues, no. In college, of course, I had quite a few different odds and ends.
What'd you do?
So the summer before my junior year, I worked at Interstate Trailers, and before that, what was the other job I did that summer? I had 2 jobs, but the real grinder summer was between my freshman and sophomore years. I came home after college ball, and I worked at Fuddruckers, rolling buns in the morning from like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. till probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Minimum wage?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And then right after that, I'd go work at delivery at Domino's. So I was doing about 80 hours a week.
Wow.
I was working like 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. 4 or 5 days a week.
I know it's cliche, but when you're doing that, are you thinking, okay, baseball's is going to take me away from this? Like, does that add to the motivation at all, or what?
No, not. I mean, honestly, I was not a prospect in baseball until a Thursday night in San Diego against Stephen Strasburg. So at this point, it was just I knew I had no money, and I knew I had nobody going to give me any money, and so it was like I need to earn as much money as possible in this summer so that I can go into Utah and pay my rent before, the financial aid and the loans come through. And so that was the main motivation, was to be able to just get through the first couple months at Utah before I could for sure get the loan money to cover the rest of the year.
Well, now we have to know about this Thursday night against Stephen Strasburg against San Diego State. I mean, he was the prospect. He was on the Olympic team in 2008. He was throwing 100. Everyone knew he was going to go first overall. You matched up against him, apparently. Tell us about that game.
Yeah, so leading up to that game, we knew we were going to San Diego State, and I was deemed the Friday night guy, but this week we were traveling with BYU, so we played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and my coach came to me earlier in the week and was like, hey, we're not going to throw you on Thursday, we're going to keep you on Friday. They've got their stud going Thursday, so, basically we got no shot at this, so we're going to try and win the back half of the series. We take off on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and my coach goes, you're going to pitch tomorrow. So I ended up lining up with Strasburg on a Thursday night. I had no idea who Stephen Strasburg was. I hadn't, when you're in college, you're not really reading the prospect reports. So you're just trying to figure out how to get all your classwork done. So we roll into San Diego, and Thursday night in college baseball is a dead night, and we're in San Diego. And so anybody within the region heard, obviously scout-wise, that Strasburg was going to go. He was sick the week before with the flu or something like that. So he didn't pitch the week before. So he's on, a couple weeks of rest. So we rolled the balls out, and he went full 9. He went complete game, struck out, 23, I think? He was sitting 99 in the 9th inning. I went 7+ innings, I think 7 1/3. There was 3 hits in the game. I gave up 1. Strasburg gave up 1. He gave up 1 hit in the 9th. I punched out, I think 11, and the only run scored in the game was with 2 outs and a runner on third. My third baseman got a ground ball to him, and instead of throwing it across the diamond for the 3rd out at first, he threw it home and off the runner's helmet. So the unearned runs scored, and we lost 1-0. But at the end of the day, it was a hell of a
put you on the
game.
map. That put you on the scouts map.
That put me, that took me from a fringe prospect into the top 3 rounds, top 5 rounds. Some projected me, first round-ish. So I pitched well the next 3 or 4 weeks ahead as well. But it was a time from my coach sitting me down and going, you don't need an agent because you're going to be a 10th round pick and you're going to get $50,000. You're going to go play baseball. To you need an agent. Here's a couple names to choose from. And I would go with one of these guys, and we need to start preparing you for what's coming.
Wow. Who did you end up picking and why, agent-wise?
I picked a guy named Lenny Strelitz, A, because my coach sent him to me, and B, because when I talked to him, he wasn't a salesman. He was a guy with a track record of hand-selecting the guys he represented, not taking in the masses, but taking in the quality. He liked how I pitched. He liked my demeanor. He was willing to fly to Salt Lake and watch me pitch again and then meet with my parents and I, take us out to dinner, do the whole thing. That's kind of standard issue in the agent world, but his character was easy to judge. He wasn't hiding anything. He wasn't selling anything. It was just, this is what I do. This is what I can offer you outside of the game. This is what other agents don't do, and I know they don't do. And he had a full repertoire. He played pro ball. He was in the front office with the Expos and the Rangers, and then ended up deciding to be an agent. So I thought it was the best all-around guy to go to, and he wasn't hounding me on a nightly basis to sign with him.
Yeah. Let's skip ahead to July 31st, 2011. You get traded, along with Tim Fedorovich and Juan Rodriguez, to the Dodgers for Trayvon Robinson. You are at Double-A at the time. You're at Double-A Portland, second year at Double-A in the Eastern League. It's the trading deadline, but I wouldn't think that you expected to get traded.
Well, every player at the trading deadline, if they're having a decent season, hopes it's the year that they get traded, because everybody knows if you get traded, somebody sees value. So until you get that kind of assurance, I guess, you kind of just think you're a worthless minor league player, unless you've got a first-round clout or a bunch of money behind you. So just to throw it out there, in that trade as well, it was a 3-team deal. So Trayvon went from the Dodgers to the Mariners, and then the Red Sox ended up getting Josh Fields and also Eric Bedard. So there's a couple more pieces to that puzzle, but yeah, it was a crazy night. We didn't expect it to happen, and I was actually in the stands in Portland charting that night and came in, and everybody's joking around with one another. Oh, you got traded. And then I came in the clubhouse after the team had already been in there, and one of my buddies, the guy who's actually the Boise State pitching coach now, looked at me and goes, "Fife, you got traded." I looked at him and gave him a gesture and mouthed something not so audible for radio. And went into my locker, and then I went in the bathroom to relieve myself after sitting there for 3 hours. And they had the radio on in the clubhouse. Nobody had an iPad on or any iPod, and they had the radio announcer on from the thing. And I heard the guy say, "Tim Fedorovich and Stephen Fife have been traded to the Dodgers." And I came out of the bathroom, and I was like, "What? Is it somebody messing around? Like, what's going on here?" And sure enough, my manager was standing in the hallway. He said, "Fife, Fed, in my office right now." She called us in, and let us know we were headed out of town tomorrow.
Wow. We got to talk about Tim Fedorovich. Because if my research is correct, he caught you 2008 short season Lowell, 2009 low A Greenville, 2009 high A Salem, 2011 double A Portland. You both get traded together. AAA Albuquerque 2012, AAA Albuquerque 2013, 2013 in the major leagues with the Dodgers, 2014 again Albuquerque. We're not done. You both signed with the Cubs, and then he catches you at AAA Iowa. I want to know, number one, why did he not go to Japan with you?
Because they don't take catchers.
Was he in your wedding?
It's funny you say that. Yes, kind of he was. So my wife and I decided to just go to Hawaii and do it on our own dime and do it real quiet. And to match up with kind of how coincidental our whole careers lined up to be, he had planned his off-season vacation with his then-girlfriend to be in Maui the same weekend my wife and I got married at the same hotel.
No way. You hadn't planned this.
Not one bit. So my wife and I had booked this pre-spring training 2012 to go to Maui and get married in December. And I think Fed found out in September when we were both call-ups in L.A., and he was like, "You're going to Maui in December?" And I was like, "Yeah, first of the month." And he's like, "No kidding." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'll be there." I think we got married on the 1st, and he was we got into town a couple days before, so late November, and he got into town like a day after and was staying like 3 days longer than we were. And I was like, well, I guess if you're going to be there, dude, like, you might as well show up. And literally, like, my cousin who lived in Hawaii came to the wedding and Fed, and that was it.
Oh, my goodness, I love it. So he was in your wedding. Who has caught you more, Tim Fedorovich or every other catcher combined?
I bet Fed's caught me the majority. It's one of those things that I was super blessed to have. Later in my career, it became a little more daunting on me that I kind of missed the road of like ironing out a relationship with the catcher totally organically, because Fed and I started together and went so many years in a row that it was just kind of, I didn't have to tell him anything. He knew my stuff. He knew my strengths. He knew what pitches I wanted to go to and where. And we had that relationship where if I chose the wrong pitch, he'd let me know. Mm-hmm. So it was an unbelievable experience to be able to do that, and it's kind of funny. He and I are still good buddies to this day. I saw him the week before we left Arizona to move to Idaho. He was down in Arizona visiting his wife's mom, and we got to hang out again. And yeah, he's an unbelievable guy, and a guy I'll be friends with the rest of my life.
It's a good thing you guys got along. Like, what if you guys hated each other?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would have been terrible. If he was some guy I couldn't get along with, and yet he was back there more often than not, I'm sure it would have. It wouldn't have been as fun for sure. I think we probably would have both been professional enough to do the job, but it's better that we're good buddies and we've done a lot of things together. Okay,
so this might be really random, so bear with me here. I was at the Boise Zoo yesterday, and afterwards I'm prepping for our podcast here, and I'm getting my numbers right about you and Fed. And at the lion's den, there's two lions, and I walked by a couple of times, and at first they're just both sleeping there, and then later one never moved, and the other kind of walked around a little bit. And I thought to myself, what if these two lions hate each other, right? Like the only other species that you are around your entire life. One of them's like, yeah, this sucks, we're in captivity, but let's have some fun, let's play around. There's like the super hyper one. And what if the other one was like, no, like these humans are the reason that we're stuck here. Like, why are you showing off for them? No, let's just be miserable and like leave me alone. Like, what if the two lions hated each other? And so I thought, well, what if Fife and FedEx hated each other? Or skipping ahead a little bit, you go to Japan. For the most part, I'm assuming that you hang out with like the other English speakers. What if you don't get along with them? Like the randomness of life with certain people. And so, well, it's a good thing you got along with them.
Yeah, I'm not one to generally be disliked too much. I definitely push people away at the beginning just because I'm kind of a stronger personality. But yeah, I mean, when I got over to Japan, it was just like that. I mean, you kind of lean towards the guys who speak English and try to buddy up with them. And it happened when I was over there. It was two Latin guys, and then the translator was a Taiwanese guy, and then my wife came over a couple weeks later, and it was us. But yeah, no, it's you're right. I mean, you try to be as easy a person to get along with in baseball, I think, is the best way to go about it, and try to make as many friends as you can, because you're family for 6 months a year, and if you don't make those relationships good, it makes for a long year.
Let's talk about your major league debut. Tuesday, July 17th, 2012, Dodger Stadium against the Phillies. It's a Tuesday night, and there's 53,498 fans there. and the lineup that you face, Jimmy Rollins, Shane Victorino, Chase Utley, Ryan Howard, Ruiz, I'm blanking on his first name. Thank you. Hunter Pence, Juan Pierre, Placido Polanco, and the opposing starting pitcher is Roy effing Halladay. When you get the lineup card, you sit down with the pitching coach and they catch you get the lineup card. What are you thinking?
So I get off the plane at LAX. They give me a car. I get to Dodger Stadium. I got my bags. I walk in. It's old locker room, Dodger Stadium. And on my chair is the lineup. And originally it was Cliff Lee at the bottom of that lineup. So I sit down and read the lineup, and I think it was the year after they won the World Series. So I think they're 6 months,
stacked.
8 months
Yeah.
removed of a World Championship. I was on kind of a nice little streak in Albuquerque, so I was feeling pretty good, but obviously super nervous and super unsure of everything. And so
you flew in the day of the start.
I did.
Okay.
I flew in probably, it was before BP, so I probably got there at like 1, 2 o'clock. They didn't take me to the hotel before, so I didn't get there like in the morning for sure. So, I sit down and read the lineup, and just as you thought, I'm like, damn, this is a lineup, Like, this is the big leagues. Like, this is the real deal. And then a couple hours later I meet with, I think it was Matt Trainer, caught that night.
It's either Trainer or A.J. Ellis it would have been.
I would think it was Matt Trainer. He caught me, so he takes me in and with Honeycutt, and we go through the lineup, and we go through the holes and the whole thing, and I go back out there and sit down, and he said, hey, there's an adjustment to the lineup. And they hand it to him, like, what is it? And I look down at the bottom, and it's freaking Roy Halladay. I'm like, good Lord, like. So I was facing a Cy Young Award winner in Cliff Lee, who was supposed to be coming off. I think he was supposed to be coming off of one of the two. I think Cliff Lee was coming off of rehab, and they pushed him a day. And they let Halladay take his day, something like that, or vice versa. But yeah, it was that was an interesting day because it was, a little intimidating to see Hall of Famers. I mean, Cy Young Award winners, both of them, on the lineup card. And guess what? Tonight you're getting the defending world champions and a Cy Young Award winner to go against.
Welcome to the major leagues. So when you finish your warm-up tosses in the bullpen and you're walking out, and Dodger Stadium's packed because it's always packed, and what are you thinking? Like, what kind of butterflies? How are your emotions as you're walking from the bullpen back out to the dugout?
So I always told myself to keep my eyes down. So and keep my eyes on the next step is kind of like the motto behind me. And so I get pretty emotionless and just super focused. So I wasn't really trying to pay attention to anything. Obviously, people are hollering and screaming, and you give the high fives to teammates in the bullpen, and then literally the whole way down there, I don't think I looked up. I think I just literally was looking at the next step I was taking and just, reminding myself, like, this is the same game. It doesn't matter the stadium, how big it is, how many people there are, that there's a third deck or a fourth deck in Dodger Stadium. But just take it one step at a time. And so my whole way there, that's kind of all I was doing, and it was pretty wild.
And you pitched your ass off. You went 6 innings. You allowed 1 run. The Dodgers were leading 2-1. You're beating Roy Halladay. And then things fall apart in the 8th inning. Ronald Belisario gets 2 outs, then a walk, then 2 hit by pitches. He's out. Kenley Jansen is a rookie at the time, I believe. Hunter Pence, 2-run single. There goes the lead. Dodgers lose 3-2, but you pitched your ass off.
Yeah, I gave up, I think Michael Young hit a double off me in the first inning and ended up scoring. And the only thing I can really recall that changed my mindset was Donnie Baseball, when I'm walking in the dugout after the first inning, looked at me and said, "That's all they get." And I took that as a directive. Like, listen, son, like, that's all they get. So sure enough, it worked out that way. I kind of settled down. At first, I was obviously nervous and took it in the first inning and gave up a run, and then ended up pitching pretty well. And the Ronald Belisario blowing the wind is a common theme if you look at like the first 6 games of my career.
Yeah. I've looked at just the starters that you faced. Roy Halladay, Matt Cain, Patrick Corbin, Adam Wainwright, and Matt Latos. Those were the opposing starters for your 5 starts in 2012.
Yeah, there was some sort of record or something like I was the first pitcher in Dodger history or first pitcher in Major League history to face 3 Cy Young Award winners in his first 4 starts. Because Wainwright had won one, Cain and Halladay are all Cy Young Award winners. So, it was a little bit of a daunting thing, and back then Latos was throwing cheddar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was sitting 96, 97, and he was a big old boy back then. So,
So the life of a guy who's trying to break in, it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. You make a good start. You're replacing Chad Billingsley. If my research is correct, he comes back. You go down to AAA. You make one start. Nathan Eovaldi gets traded to the Marlins and the Hanley Ramirez deal. Now you're back up in the major leagues, and you get your first major league win. You beat the Giants and Matt Cain.
Nope, not a win.
It was not a win? I thought it was 6 1/3 innings against the Giants, and you got the win.
Belisario blew that one too.
What? Darn you, internet research.
I didn't get a win until 2013.
Darn you, research. Oh, the Dodgers won, but you didn't get the win.
That's right.
Okay. Ronald Belisario. I know the coaches always say, look, you can't control this stuff. Shut out the noise. Just focus on what you can do, all that. But how easy is that? How hard is that? They ended up trading for Joe Blanton, and so now you go back down to the minor leagues again, and you're trying to get established. You're trying to do these things, and so much of it is out of your hands. Kind of how do you mentally process, just the trying to break in and stay in?
Yeah, I mean, that's you just live it. I mean, you just go day at a time, step at a time, moment at a time. I mean, I made it through the deadline. Like, there was chatter all around the Dodgers that they were going to trade for a starter, and August 1st came, and they didn't make the trade. And so I thought, I'm here. I'm going to be in the rotation the rest of the season. And then I think on the August 3rd, they traded for Blanton. And obviously it was announced, and the first guy to greet him in L.A. that was a part of the Dodgers was myself at the hotel desk. Okay. I was like, shook his hand, and was like, hey, man, nice to meet you. And I'll see you never. Or I'll see you back in September, So that's the way I had broken with the Dodgers when they were not quite in a financial situation. They were getting over the Frank McCourt ownership, and so it was a time where there's a lot of uncertainty around the finances, and so 2011 there wasn't a lot of spending going on, and then obviously Mark Walter and the Guggenheim Group took it over, and so kind of knew that, and Magic came down and gave us a spiel as well.
What was that like?
He is captivating. So he gave us like a full-blown pump-up speech. I think right after the deadline. I think it was literally like the deadline closed on August 31st, or I'm sorry, is it July 31st?
Yeah.
Deadline closed on July 31st, and that before the game he came down and was like, we are where we are, and you got what you need, so go get them. And it was really cool. So, and then of course 3 days later I'm back in Albuquerque. So.
When you go back to AAA, do you feel like the eyes are on you? Like, how's he going to react? Is he going to be in a bad mood? Do you consciously think I need to act a certain way, especially since you're the dad of the clubhouse?
Well, AAA 2012, I was not the dad of the clubhouse. In the lower minor leagues when I was the guy out of college and everybody else was out of high school and no life experience. I was the dad, but AAA is a different beast. So, but yeah, no, you definitely. I remember talking to Jean. After coming back down, you have 3 days technically to report to your minor league club after getting sent down from the big leagues, and obviously some guys take those days and some guys don't, and I definitely consciously took the approach of not taking those days and getting me back, even though there was days at times when I got sent down, like, hey, why don't you take a day at home and we can't activate you for a little while. We got to kind of shuffle the rotation to fit you back in down there, or whatever it was. But I was just like, no, I'll just go to Albuquerque and I'll show up to the park, and if I can't play, then I can't suit up or whatever, then I won't. But I'll be there with the team and support the guys, and I'm as much a part of this organization in Albuquerque as I am in the big leagues. So I did my best to make sure that was seen from me.
The one time that I remember that I felt the worst for you, I think it was 2014, and we had just bussed to Fresno. And everyone knew that you were going to start like the next day, like in Chicago or whatever. And I was like, why in the world did they make this dude bus with us down to Fresno just so he can turn around and fly to wherever he's going? Because at that time you were back and forth constantly, starting the major, starting in AAA. And I'm like, this tiny airport in Fresno, what in the world are they doing? Why is he not just going to – he must have been in Sacramento or Reno or wherever we were. And I remember just feeling like, God dang it, what is wrong? Like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Yeah, that was a tough night. I think that was August the 13th, August 1st, I think, August 1st. I think I pitched in Wrigley, and yeah, you're right. We were in Sacramento. We bussed to Fresno. It was supposed to be like a 4-hour ride. There's some construction. It ended up being like a 6-hour ride.
Yep.
We got in, I think, at like 3:30 in the morning, and I had a taxi to the airport at 5. So, yeah, that was a rough go because they wanted to get me to Chicago. Well, how did that work out? Because I got to Chicago the night before the start. So whatever it was, I had an all-night bus ride, early flight out. I didn't get to. I think I got delayed on the way to Chicago from Fresno, 3 or 4 hours. So I was supposed to get there at like 7 or 8 in the evening. No, I think it was early, like 3 or 4 in the evening. I didn't get there until 7 or 8. Ended up meeting up with Rizzo, and his parents cooked us a pasta dinner the night before with Fedorovich as well.
Okay, of course.
We all played together, and Fed was already up. So Fed and Riz were hanging out since after the day game, 5 o'clock or whatever, and I didn't roll in until it was later, 8 or 9 p.m. Went over and had cold pasta dinner and reheated pasta dinner at that. But anyway, yeah, no, that's one of those minor league days where you go, this sucks. But I ended up going out there and pitching well against the Cubs, and I got to break my buddy off, so that was kind of cool. I still got the bat in my office. So Riz sent over his 2-piece bat after the game. And
where'd you know him from?
We played together with the Red Sox.
Okay, that's right.
So we played together in Salem. Salem and Portland.
So what are some unusual, like, fun mementos like that, like broken bats of friends, teammates, like other kind of stuff that you save that you kind of like?
That's kind of the only one that I have from like the big league experience is Rizzo sent over the broken bat, and I sent him over a baseball that was I put on K number 1.
Okay.
Because I struck him out. But yeah, no, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of the minor league or major league stuff. I mean, I've got bags and bags of gear, but I don't really have a ton of super personal stuff.
I remember one time, me and Glenn Dishman, your former pitching coach, we were talking. I don't know how it came up, but we're talking ball and about the guys on the roster. And I remember Dishman saying, like, just how proud he was of you. He's like, look, this guy doesn't throw 99. This guy doesn't have, like, this hellacious splitter, or some trick pitch or anything like that. But look what he's done. Look the way that he's grinded. Look the way that he made it. Look what he's contributed to the organization. And certainly everyone always wants more time in the major leagues and more wins. But I'm wondering, what makes you most proud about what you were able to do?
Probably pretty close to what Dish said. I mean, I knew all along I was a pretty average pitcher. I mean, out of college, I was, 92, 94 with a curveball. I get into pro ball, and immediately I'm told that what I have isn't good enough and that I've got a long way to go from the organizational pitching coordinator, which is kind of the guy who's making the decisions. And then get traded to the Dodgers and really just struggle out of the gate. I mean, Josh Bard in New Orleans in 2012 sits me down in the bullpen after a pretty terrible April. I think I walked like 30-some guys in April. And he sat me down in the bullpen in New Orleans, and it's hot and it's muggy and there's nobody around, and he just straightened me out. It was like, whatever you're doing is not good enough, and your two-seam is trash. So you gotta bang that thing, and your curveball's good, but we can't throw it every pitch. And that was I think that's probably the only time on a baseball field where I've been almost in tears, because it was that kind of a in-your-face, this isn't good enough talk. And so from that point forward, I figured it out. I straightened it out. I banged the two-seam, went to a four-seam. It started to cut a little bit. And I guess the thing I'm most proud of is just grinding it out and figuring out how to pitch and displaying the ability to pitch on a somewhat regular basis. I guess on the flip side, the thing I'm not so proud of is my health history, but some of that's unavoidable or out of your control, but it kind of is in your control. But nonetheless, yeah, no, it's that's definitely it.
Yeah, I remember when you walked off the mound. I'm broadcasting the game. It's July 18th, 2014 at Isotopes Park against Sacramento, and I remember just thinking, this does not look good, the way that he's coming off the mound with the trainer. I'm pretty sure Fed was catching that day. Did you know your elbow was toast as you were walking off the mound?
Yeah, I was pretty sure. I was a changeup, and it turned out to be a sac fly. Yeah, I mean, it was a pain that I had never felt before, and so I'd tried to get through it, and I kind of got pushed out of my rehab a little bit quick, and there was opportunity in the big leagues, and they didn't have a lot of depth at that time, and so they got me out to see if I could get ready enough to go back to the big leagues, and it turned out the way it did. yeah, that's the way that cookie crumbled. I actually hurt my elbow in the big leagues against Jose Fernandez in Miami. Came off from that start, pitched okay, not great, but had definitely some tenderness on the epicondyle on the inside of the elbow, and then tried to give it a go in El Paso, and then some rehab time, and then you can't forget that pitch.
Did you feel it? You feel it, like, is it like as you're delivering the pitch, you feel something?
I remember like feeling like I got the ball out of my hand and like then my arm recoiled, which in the film it does not, but I felt like as soon as I let go of the ball that like I gator armed it and just kind of T-Rexed it and was like, this isn't good. And Possum was a trainer then and is still an unbelievable trainer and a fantastic human being, and he knew it was not good, and so he came sprinting out and I mean, it's a pain that you can't. I don't know. I've torn a couple ligaments, one in my left thumb to get me started pitching, and the other one in my right elbow to stop me from pitching. So both a similar situation, a similar feeling in terms of what it feels like to separate ligament from bone.
There's so much talk in baseball about pitch counts and what can be done to keep guys healthier for longer. And I know it's just your example, but you look back and say, if this, if that, is there anything, or is it just it's a violent act throwing a baseball? And and as you said, there was an opportunity in the big leagues, and they needed somebody, and you're trying to figure out a way to get there and stay there.
Yeah, a lot of pressure in that aspect to just get out there, because you only get so many opportunities. And when guys are going down and they need arms, and you could be a guy that could be the arm, you want to get out there and do what you have to do. And from that side, I mean, I wish I would have found the training that I found the last couple of years. Out of all the things that are taught in pitching now about how to separate hips and shoulders and how to stay back and all this kind of stuff, there's not a lot of people out there teaching you actually how to use your body. And so I ran into some people, a really good outfit out of Ahwatukee, the Phoenix area, and Evo Ultra Fit is what they're called. They got stuff on YouTube, and Ryan Madsen's one of their big clients, and they've had Matt Kemp and Jerry Hairston Jr., and they've had a lot of guys, a lot of NFL guys, and they basically teach you how to use your body, what muscles are supposed to be contracting at what point, and what you're actually supposed to feel, what muscles are actually supposed to be activating as you're doing a squat or you're doing stuff. And that kind of stuff really, really tuned me up the last couple of years. And although I didn't have I got successful enough to go to Japan, but that training really trained my brain how to use my body, and I look back and wish I would have had that knowledge back in 2012, 13, and 14 when I really needed it.
So when you miss all of 2015, how much time are you back home? It's got to be weird. I mean, you're rehabbing, you're under contract, but yet you're just not a part of anything for that year.
Yeah, I wasn't under contract, so they DFA'd me at the end of 14,
okay,
and I went unclaimed, and then because of my time I'd been since I was drafted, I became an unrestricted minor league free agent. So I spent 2015 bartending at the Melting Pot.
Really?
As my
in what city?
In Glendale.
In Glendale.
Not too far from where I live, so off of 59th Avenue and the 101. It was one of the only jobs I could find that they opened up late and shut down early, so I could work basically from 3 to 11, and then be home and then go to rehab the next day at 7, 8 in the morning so that I could get that in. But that was one of those things where you get workers' comp of Arizona workers' comp, which isn't a bunch of money, but they required if you could lift to have a job. If you could lift more than 25 pounds, you had to get a job in order to get the workers' compensation. And so you can cheat the system and quote-unquote apply for jobs, but I decided I didn't really want to get caught in that situation, so I just got a job and was slinging drinks and
What's your favorite drink to sling?
Shoot, I don't know. I don't know if any of them were all that fun to sling, but the Love Martini was definitely the most ordered item on the menu. And
what's in a Love Martini?
Shoot, it was Malibu rum and triple sec. And there was one other ingredient with a splash of cranberry in it, so it made it like a pink martini. And then we would cut the strawberries into heart-shaped and drop a few strawberries in there. So you get 3 hearts in this pink martini, and I poured a lot of those.
All right, this is a good transition for this question. If you don't want to answer it, you don't have to if it's too personal, and I'll make a note and delete it out. But I remember talking to somebody, ball player, and he said, I went on the disabled list 3 times, and my wife got pregnant all 3 times that I went on the disabled list. And I have heard that there might be a ratio of guys who were on the disabled list, and then 9 months later, they welcome a child into the world.
Yeah, both of my boys are right around. They were conceived in spring training, right around St. Patrick's Day, right around this time of year. Actually.
Okay.
So both of my boys are late November boys, 2 years apart.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theories out there on the disabled list, and you can make the acronym whatever you'd like, but. Some of them call it the drinking list, and some call it the other, whatever else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you have a lot of downtime, and you got a lot of. If you're on the major league deal, you got a lot of money coming in and a lot of downtime, and therefore you have a lot of possibilities.
Right. Speaking of possibilities, let's go to 2017 when you went to Japan. Started that season with the Marlins at AAA, and then you go to the Cebu Lions. You had made 12 starts at AAA. Explain the process of how that comes about to go overseas.
This started in 2016 when I was in Des Moines, and actually had a look from the Yomiuri Giants, and a guy I played with, Josh Fields, if you remember that name, third baseman Josh Fields, not reliever Josh Fields, but he was working for the Yomiuri Giants, and they were interested in taking me in 2016 over to Japan. So I'd worked with my agent to kind of market myself for that potential. I actually had a contract on the table the morning I started in Des Moines, and that evening I blew my oblique.
Oh, no.
So I had, as I call it, the most disappointing day of my career, in which there was a 6-figure sum on the table, guaranteed, and I went out there and pitched that night, and in the 5th inning I strained my oblique and lost that opportunity.
Gosh.
So that was 2016, and then 2017 comes, and pitch well, and there's rumblings, and the word had gotten out to the Japanese scouts of what happened the year before, that Yomiuri was going to bring me over. And so there was – Japanese people are a little bit they're funny about that kind of stuff. So they tried to keep it real quiet from me, like that there was actual interest. My agent kind of led on to it, but it just worked out that they put a contract on the table and we negotiated a little bit, and it was signed, and you can't – somebody puts a 6-figure sum in front of you, it's hard to turn it down. So I took that opportunity, and, I can look back and say whatever I want, but like 6-7 days after I signed, Edison Volquez blew his knee, I think. First had his knee go, and then his elbow, and that would have been me. So I could have been back in the big leagues. But I don't regret any of it, and I had a great time in Japan, and that whole courting process of pitching well, and I actually pitched well in a tough place to pitch well when I got the final straw that kind of got me the contract. Was a really good start in Colorado Springs, and I think I went 8 innings that night, and pitched really well. And Kevin Hodges was the Japanese scout for Cebu that's out of Houston, and liked what he saw. And the next thing I know, I'm in New Orleans and call my wife and say, I got it. Going to Japan, and it was more money than I would have made in the big leagues had I been in the big leagues the rest of the year.
Compare what it's like flying to Japan versus flying to Boston to start your professional career just out of college.
Well, that's a good comparison. Almost equal amounts of uncertainty. No idea what you're getting into. So, I mean, baseball-wise, I knew I was going to go out there and pitch. Surroundings, etc. No idea going to Boston what they were going to be. I'd never been actually east of I went to Pennsylvania, I guess, but that was a super sheltered experience in terms of getting outside of the woods of Williamsport. So I hadn't really been a whole lot of East Coast in my life, and so that was a completely new. I was kind of surprised, they have roads and trees and signs just like we do back home, type of thing. And then you get to Japan and you get off and nothing's in English, and you have to wait your turn on the overhead intercom to get the message in English to kind of figure out what's going on. And yeah, a lot of craziness when you get to Japan in terms of just not sure what you're going to get. I mean, you're going to get an apartment with 7-foot ceilings and a little tiny bed.
Where did you live?
So the team I played for was out of Tokorozawa, Japan, and I actually lived in Tokorozawa, which is somewhat of a rarity, I guess, in the Japanese. When foreign players come over, they house them kind of in the best spots. And it just so happened this apartment had opened up, and it was a nice big apartment for Japanese standards. And the rest of the guys stayed down like 40 minutes away, and I was like 12 minutes away.
Oh, wow.
So I was fortunate in that aspect. But I had a nice third-story apartment. It was probably 1,500 square feet, 1,200 square feet. It was nice and big. It was technically Japanese 4 bedrooms, but it was really 3 bedrooms, and everything's a little smaller there in terms of like countertop height and stuff like that. But no, it was a nice apartment. Really enjoyed my time over there.
Yeah, what about food? Like, how much did you like sushi and Japanese cuisine before you got there? How much did you experiment with learning different things, different food items?
So my dad played at the University of Hawaii when he played college football, and so since I was a kid, we'd experienced Asian cuisine all over. I mean, most of our birthday dinners as a family were at like a teppanyaki or a sushi house, and so I had already known majority of what Japanese food was, and so I loved it. I mean, Japanese sushi is different than American sushi in that you get a piece of fish on a rice ball for the most part. So if you don't really actually like raw fish, then you're not in a good place. Like, you're not getting cream cheese and spicy mayo and stuff all over your sushi. Like, you're getting wasabi, a little dab of wasabi on a rice ball and a raw piece of fish. But I loved it. It was fantastic. The Korean barbecue, which is basically raw. Most of the time it's beef. You can get pork as well, but they do like a charcoal grill in front of you, and you cook your own meat, and that's by far the best food I've ever eaten in my life. So I really, really thoroughly enjoyed my time in Japan.
That's good. I'm glad, because I mean, you have to enjoy the entire experience. I remember talking to Ken Maka, and Maka was there for a long time, and he said that when he went there, he thought, I'm going to do it exactly their way. I'm not going to be the American who just says, like, no, this is my set way. He's like, if I'm going to go, I'm going to do everything their way. And they ended up loving him. He became one of their most famous Americans who went over to Japan. And you weren't there for that long. I've always heard about how like intense their training sessions are, especially in spring training compared to America. What did you experience middle of the season going over there?
Yeah, they do everything, a lot of everything. I actually went to Japan the off season before that to try out for a Korean team, and they kind of all have the same philosophy, and they understand that they're not the biggest, strongest people, and so they have to do everything that they're capable of doing it really well. And so, especially the Korean side, they do hundreds and hundreds of reps at all different speeds, slow speed, really fast, rapid fire, like all kinds of stuff. And mid-season in Japan wasn't as crazy, but like the warm-ups are long. I mean, 35 minutes of calisthenics and jogging and doing that kind of stuff. And they pretty much let the Americans outside of that warm-up do kind of whatever they want. But yeah, it's a different workload for the native players than it is here in America.
Did you take anything back to the United States? Like, you know what, I kind of like that. I want to do that more often, or try that more often. That sounds like a no.
Probably not. I mean, they literally just kind of let me stick to my routine, and at that point, I mean, I was 9-10 years into my pro career, and so I had my routine down, and so I wasn't really all that interested in trying to reinvent my wheel. Just kind of stick with it and try to, as you said of the guy before, I wanted to do things as much their way as possible, but be as successful as possible, because my goal was to spend the rest of my career over there.
Why'd you come back?
Didn't get the opportunity to go back over for the most part. The situation that got dealt to me really wasn't a good one. I went over there, and they have 6 starters in a rotation. They had 5 cemented, and they were rotating 3 different guys for the 6th spot. So when they brought me over, I was the 4th guy to be an option for the 6th spot. And so it just wasn't a great opportunity, and there was already kind of a rift between the manager and the scouting and the GM. So over there, the managers have full responsibility and power over everything baseball related, and the GM has no say in who gets sent up, sent down. He does his best to sign as good of players and manage the budget essentially, but once the players are in-house, the manager has complete control.
Oh, that's interesting.
So Ernesto Mejia kind of didn't do his part. He signed a big 3-year, $15 million deal and kind of showed up and didn't perform all that well. And it was a new manager who didn't really appreciate that they signed him for the amount of money that they did, which made him the highest paid player on the team, which is not something that happens all that often in Japan for a foreigner to be the highest paid guy. And then he didn't perform. And so when I came over as another foreign guy, I kind of got put in some spots that weren't all that advantageous to a foreign player. And got sent up and sent down and did that a few times and just really never got a real opportunity to perform.
Yeah. But you enjoy the experience, the country and all
yeah,
that.
the country, the people, the culture, the guys I've met. I mean, I would seriously, I would have loved to be over there right now playing and still be making money and throwing a baseball in Japan. That was the goal. Play until I was 34, 35 and do the rest of it over there.
Yeah. You got about 5-10 minutes left?
Yeah.
I know you got to get back to work. What are some of the more do you have a favorite brawl or the worst brawl that you were in? Were you in that Memphis Albuquerque one? Were you up for that one?
I was up in the big leagues for that one, so I was not in Albuquerque for that one.
And did you miss the ear biting?
I was a first base coach.
You were
for
the
year
first
by,
base
yeah.
coach.
So Alex Guerrero, I was in charge. I was hurt at that time, so I was going out to coach first base because I couldn't do anything else. And that altercation started just as I was leaving the dugout, and then I could see it happen from the first base box, and saw the scuffle, and then saw the breakaway, and then saw Possum on the ground picking something up and putting it in a cup, and again came back to the dugout, and guys were just deer in the headlights, just didn't have any idea what had just happened, and it was Alex Guerrero got his ear bit off.
I remember I'm up in the press box and I can't see the home dugout, so I had no idea what was going on. Like I can't see it. I have no idea. And I see that both of them are out of the game, and I'm thinking, oh, Guerrero's got called up to the major leagues because there was a lot of talk about whether he was about to get called up. They just moved him to second. He was crushing home runs left and right. And I'm like, all right, he got his at-bats in. He's going to the major leagues. And all of a sudden my phone just starts blowing up with just like text messages and stuff from Twitter. And I'm like, what is all this that's going on? I still had no idea. The game ends, and then someone says, yeah, they took Guerrero to the hospital. I'm like, what? Like, what happened? I go down to the clubhouse, and Barry Hill yells at me to get the hell out of this office, and then Deshaun Watson tells me to get the hell out of this. And so I just walk back to the hotel. I still had no idea. I go back to the hotel. I take a nap because it was a morning game. It was a Kids' Day matinee. And all of a sudden I wake up like 3 hours later, and I, go on Twitter, ESPN.com, and I'm like, what? Ear biting? I had no idea. And I'm the one who's calling the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was done in the dugout. It started on the field at the pitching visit, and yeah, I mean that's one of those altercations that you'll never forget and you'll never quite understand. But it sure enough, it happened. It's a real thing. Wow.
What are some other unique, only in minor league baseball, not necessarily ear biting situations? Oh yeah, the Boston Marathon thing. You're drafted by the Red Sox. And it was April 15th of 2013. We've got a day game in Des Moines, Iowa. And you started that day. And, a place where you know people, and this horrendous thing happened. And tell us about some of the conversations with you and your wife and some people that you know.
Yeah, so my wife actually had a friend she went to high school with that was, I think, on the other side of the street of the bombing, like maybe 200-300 yards down, so didn't get hit by it, but she actually on Facebook knew many people that were posted that got hit by shrapnel or whatever that happened there. I knew Danny Nava pretty well, still know him pretty well, and he was in Boston, and it was kind of hard to contact those guys, but we all knew that none of the baseball players were necessarily involved in it, but it was just kind of one of those striking times when terrorism hits and it hits close to people that it's kind of crazy. And my wife was definitely more in tune with what was going on there. But yeah, you definitely start thinking about those people that are involved there, and that I think they shut down. I think they locked up the stadium that day and didn't play that night, and ended up playing a couple days later, which is the infamous David Ortiz speech on the field, which happened. I think it was 2 days later. I think they canceled the game that night and the next day. But yeah, that was an interesting day. I actually don't even remember pitching that day, and that probably is more so because of after I came in. And now that we're sitting here talking, I do remember coming into the clubhouse after pitching and hearing that the bombing had happened, and immediately going to my phone to see what was happening, if where it was, and how many people were involved. And then obviously my wife had probably texted me 100 times at that point. So yeah, that was an interesting day in my career that I don't remember all that well, but definitely had a close impact due to my wife being born and raised 45 minutes outside of Boston.
Yeah. Do you have other like a stupid, you're like, really, we have to wear this jersey? Like, jersey auction kind of like stuff. You're like, really? We have to wear this jersey? Or other just only in minor league baseball memories?
Oh, man. I mean, I can't tell you how many jerseys we've worn that I've been like, is this real? Like, this is, I mean, pink jerseys and superhero jerseys and old-timer. Like, I think the old-timer ones in the lower minors were the ones that you were like, is this real? Like, get these literally, like, wool-ish type jerseys that are huge. I mean, down almost to your knees with, like, the shorter pants. And oftentimes, I remember a couple in Greenville where, like, they would give us the uniforms, and, like, it wasn't like one team. It was like 5 guys on our team would have one jersey and 5 guys with another, and so you'd have like 5 different uniforms to make up one game, and you're like, what is going on here? Like, can we at least just have all one uniform and not like a cream uniform and an off-white and a white? And anyway, it was, yeah, there's been a number of jerseys and hats, and I mean, the worst ones are when you get, as long as the hat is good, I think the jerseys are bearable. But it's really bad when you get like the fake leather strap adjustable, like floppy hat, and you're like, I'm supposed to go start and pitch with this hat on. Like, it's like Small's hat from the Sandlot. Right. I mean, it's almost disrespectful, honestly. Like, and that's the way a lot of players feel about it too. Is like when you get those kind of half-baked thoughts and they turn into uniforms, and you're like, yo, like, I'm supposed to be treated as professional here, and this is not professional.
We'll make sure that we keep that in mind when we come up with our marketing ideas for the Albuquerque Isotopes in the future. Although I think the Topes have been pretty good over the years.
John Traub is a legend. He is as good a GM as there is in the game, and I don't recall ever getting the Velcro strap or the Little League, the Little League camp hat in Albuquerque. I'm sure maybe it happened once or twice, but we had a good setup there.
So now that you've transitioned into the other side, has there been a time yet in which you're talking to a potential client or someone who's a client, and you go, when I pitched at Dodger Stadium, and then try to relate it back to like what you're trying to sell right now?
I haven't brought it out, but when the company asked me to do my bio and stuff, like I looked at there's some other players that are doing commercial real estate that played in the big leagues or played a long time in minor league baseball, whatever, and so it's in my bio. And so a guy I spoke to last week, actually, his cousin's a big investor out of Southern California, and he was from Southern California, and we exchanged emails and then talked on the phone for like 30 minutes, and then next thing I know, he sends me a follow-up email after, and he's like, you played for the Dodgers? And starts rattling off like all the guys he watched in Brooklyn when he was a kid, and mentions all the names and all that kind of stuff, Koufax and Wills and Gibson and all these guys. And, of course, I've been encouraged by both my company and by, the people that I've talked to outside of Major League Baseball, but that are still involved in kind of the career development outside of the game. They're like, use it as much as you can. And so I just shot an email back to him and just kind of listed off, like, I had a unique experience with Sandy Koufax, and he kind of gave me a curveball pitching lesson. Please
tell us this Sandy Koufax story.
So Sandy's in camp, and he comes every year, but he's super incognito, and he doesn't like the attention, and so he stays behind the fence. And I threw a bullpen and had a good session, and my dad happened to be there for it, so he was watching. And then I get done with my pen, and Sandy pulls me aside, and he's like, how do you grip your curveball? And so we just start going through it, and I show him and talk to him about kind of where my eyes are at and what I'm trying to do with my hand and what I think about to get through the ball. And then he basically asked me, well, can I give you a couple pointers? I mean, only an ignorant fellow would say no, but so I absolutely. And of course, my dad's literally standing right next to me, and so we're sitting there talking to Sandy Koufax, and he starts gripping the baseball, and his hands are so big. I mean, he has hands of a guy that's you would think would be 6'10", and so he showed me his grip of his curveball, and it's hard to describe it in radio, but he would basically pinch the ball like a forkball between his middle finger and his ring finger, and then he would wrap his fingers all the way around the ball and his thumb would split his middle finger and his index, or his middle finger and his ring finger. And he would have this like choke grip on it, and he could almost touch his fingers. His hands were so big that he could almost touch his fingertips. And he talked about being able to manipulate the curveball all the way from 12-6 to 1-7 to 11-5. And he could craft his curveball either in or away from either side of the plate, which either side batter. So, and that's crazy. I mean, I've never heard of anybody doing that, but he basically was able to do that. And, I mean, then he signed a ball for me after and wrote a little personal note on it. And, of course, that's in the trophy case at home. But definitely a unique experience, especially as he ages. And there's, I'll take that one to my grave. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is the one thing about the Dodgers. Man, it's just like the history everywhere, even in Albuquerque, like the guys, Ramon Martinez just shows up one day, and Tommy Davis shows up one day, and then at spring training, all the legends are there. And, that was the thing that I'm glad that it never got old, was just seeing these guys, and they're just hanging out, and they're like, hey, and they just want to talk baseball, they want to talk pitching or whatever, or they want to talk about where should we go get dinner. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they are a very approachable group and constantly around, and I think the new ownership group has done a really good job of trying to bring those people back into the fold and give them a voice and give them a jersey and give them a locker when it's necessary. And definitely a unique experience to be able to be around guys that maybe I didn't grow up watching, but as you kind of further your life in baseball, you kind of gain more knowledge and respect for those who came before you. And, yeah, you get to be around Don Newcombe, and, I mean, his story is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, I mean, God rest his soul, he just passed not too long ago. But
did you hear him speech? Because wouldn't he usually go to the minor league side and give the whole speech about everything that he had went through and everything?
Yeah, he did that once, but I think my more intimate setting was the Dodgers did like a kind of a rookie camp in the winter, and I got to be, I think there was like 10 guys, 12 guys that went to it, and he came in and spoke to us in a small setting in the lunchroom in the big league stadium, and actually almost fainted during it, and we don't really know what happened, but he got really hot, and we had to pause, and then he came back and spoke some more. But like, you look back, and he was with Jackie Robinson, man. Like, he was. Yeah. Nobody really talks about him, but he was as good as they came, but he was second noticed to Jackie because he's on the field every day. But, man, Don Newcombe went through some stuff, and then went through some stuff post-playing that really changed his life. I mean, changed his family. I mean, it's a good story to read. I hope somebody at some point writes an autobiography about him, because it's a story that's not that well told, but you gain a lot of respect for the stuff that he went through on and off the field for many years.
Yeah, he was always fun and always the best dressed guy at the ballpark, always, with his hats and his suits and everything. I think for like 5 minutes I've been thinking, all right, that's the last question, and then you say, and then like, I want to hear about this, but we'll let you go. This was fun. Thank you for connecting on LinkedIn. We got to stay in touch, and thanks for the visit today.
Yeah, absolutely. Next time you're back, we'll do it again.
Yeah, sounds good. That's Stephen Fife, and this was Life Around the Seams.